Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And throughout the month of August, we've been looking at The Dark Knight and Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. And it's time to look at something a little bit in that same vein, but also featuring a different character, and that is Superman. It's time to look at the other side of the DC side of the coin. And Dragon, we're talking about The Death of Superman, finally the big comic book adaptation from DC Animation. And man, oh man, of course, this has a guest spot from Patrick Fabian of Better Call Saul fame. And it's just, it's the comic come to life. It's a big historical event, Dragon. Why don't you tell us about it, sir? Why don't you give us the skimmy on this thing?
All right, so I'm going to kind of do a little bit of the movie and the comic history as far as the death goes here. So here's kind of what you need to know going into the movie here, folks. So background goes like so. There have been at least, not counting this, there have been 3 Death of Superman adaptation attempts in various forms of media, film, and television. We have Justice League took a stab at it with Hereafter, where basically they quote unquote killed off Superman, and they kind of did the whole funeral and world without a Superman story. Then of course we had the animated film as part of the DC original animated film line, Superman Doomsday, which is the first film they did to kick things off. Basically, it was the first big PG-13 Superman animated movie, and of course, adapting one of the most famous Superman stories of all time. You'll hear people constantly tell the first comic they picked up many a time will be Death of Superman, because it was such a huge monumental event in the 90s. So you had that film, which basically condensed the whole entirety of that story, Death of Superman, World Without Superman, and the Reign of the Supermen, into 75 minutes. Which, as we've learned is not enough time to tell that story. And of course, we took a stab at it literally with BVS and Justice League, and well, that one kind of varied. They adapted that part of it well, but I mean, there's still it was a bumpy road to say the least. I won't get into it here, but my point. So again, they tried to condense Superman with Superman Doomsday. They tried to condense the whole Death of Superman event into 75 minutes, and basically post Dark Knight Returns, which basically took a huge iconic story and we broke it into 2 parts. We had the confidence to break that film into 2 parts, tell kind of 2 chapters, then 2 chapters in the next movie, to really kind of give that story its due. And after they have the juice with a project like that, years later, DC they're looking for new projects, looking for new stories to adapt, and they kind of figure, you know what? Our first big line, we're kind of reaching some milestones here. Let's go back and let's tell it right. Let's do it in 2 parts like we should have in the first place. We didn't have the confidence to do when we got this whole shindig started. And they basically revisited the idea, basically doing what they do at Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay, where, okay, we're going to use the whole in-continuity line as an excuse to retell or re-explore an idea we've already done in another film. So Sam Liu, he's directing this. And of course, Sam Liu is one of our favorites. He has directed works such as Batman Year One, All-Star Superman, Justice League Gods and Monsters, and as I mentioned, Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay. Great director. That Sam Liu is one of the best, top tier. So, yes, getting to the real quick. We have Pete Tomasi. He wrote this. The guy who basically in the New 52, which the whole in-continuity line is based on, he basically redid Death of Superman in the comics. So they kind of pulled the right guy for the job to kind of retell that story here. Of course, we kind of focus on the emotional arc of it all, which the first attempt of this didn't really do that much. In terms of the history of Death of Superman, I'm going to keep it very simple here. They did something called a Super Summit. Basically, back in the 90s, what they would do is they get all 4 writers of the 4 Superman books under the same roof for about kind of like a Pixar kind of story session in a cabin, essentially. It's kind of like one of those things. They get all the writers so they can basically compile these Superman stories for the year, so they don't run over. They can basically come up with a very kind of a convalescent plan. Like, okay, here's what we're going to do. All the stories are going to flow. Bada bing, bada boom. Then basically their plan is, okay, Superman's going to reveal his identity, Lois Lane. They're going to propose and they're going to get married. That's the year of stories they have planned out. But then Lois and Clark gets off the ground, the TV show. Lois and Clark get started, and they run into a problem because, oh my God, Lois and Clark is going to be perfect promotion for what we're doing in the comics. That's wonderful, but there's a little proviso. The problem is such, and this is important. The problem is Lois and Clark has it that they can't get Lois and Superman married in the comics until they do it on the show first. And of course, being a television show, they're going to drag that out to like roughly the third or fourth season. So when that show's getting started, they want to kill him off. I mean, when that gets started, they want to marry him off and everything. So okay, well, what are we going to do until we can marry him off? Like, you have to do until can't do it until after the show does it. So Jerry Ordway, one of the various writers, he gets the idea of like he always has a running gag in each of these summits, each of these Superman summits. He keeps saying, "Let's just kill him." And I say, "Okay, maybe there's something to that idea. Okay, what if we did kill him? What would we do?" Basically, they basically they kill him off. They figure out, okay, how are we going to kill him off? They come up with Doomsday. They come up with basically build to a 22-page slug list. Basically, like extend the death in the most gritty, brutal way possible for an issue, and do like 6 other issues building up to that. Nation mourns for roughly 2 to 3 months of no Superman. They kill him off. They like an in memoriam thing in the papers. Like, they kill Superman off big in public. And Shorts, there's more to that story, which we're going to break up to when we get the second part of this film, because as I said, this film's broken up into 2 parts. Death of Superman, and next year we're going to get Reign of the Supermen, which we'll get into the rest of that story when we get there. But of course, the punchline that Tiki and I are absolutely familiar with is that years later, this is all in 93. In 1998, we get Superman Lives in development, with Kevin Smith, John Peters, and Tim Burton. So that's 5 years later. It just shows you the impact of this story. 5 years later, we're bringing Superman back to the big screen. We we pull from the big sources, is what I'm saying.
Uh-huh. Okay, and Dragon, really simply, my thoughts on this film. I like it a lot. I think it's really engaging. I don't think it's quite in that Justice League Gods and Monsters, Return to the Cape Crusaders level, but I think it's kind of like one step below that, which is high praise. I'd say it's probably probably a little bit below Dark Knight Returns, but still, it's in good company. And what I like about this is it's very much a standalone kind of bottle episode of a Superman story. I like how the whole thing basically takes place over a weekend for all intents and purposes. And in the spirit of the comic, the slugfest really does kind of draw out to a whole movie, and I think that's great, and it really gives us a chance to really explore all the things and all the action from different angles, from Lex's point of view, from Lois and Jimmy's point of view, and it ends up being a really fun, really quick movie, and I think we're gonna have a good time with the commentary.
Oh yeah, I remember after Suicide Squad, it's been a slog of all those in-continuity films, Tegan. They had been so back-to-back disappointing or terrible. And then Suicide Squad comes out. It's like, oh my God, they actually made one that worked. And then they're advertising this one. Basically, when this news broke, Tiki was like, oh my God, they're doing Death of Superman again. Hooray. And then you find out it's in the in-continuity, like, no. And then Suicide Squad comes out. It's like, okay, I'm dialed in. Maybe they're going to do it right this time. And I got to tell you, I think they did. So
yeah, I will say I like this movie even maybe a little bit better than Suicide Squad Hell to Pay.
Okay, so that said, hit him with the lethal weapon of it all.
You know what, Dragon? Why don't you hit him with the lethal weapon of it all? I'm tired of doing it.
Okay.
I'm giving the responsibility over to you, sir. I'm passing the torch. Not permanently, just for the evening.
All right, so folks, very simply, we're going to try to keep this conversational as we can, but if you'd like to follow along like the easy route, by all means, you can get your copy of Death of Superman. However you have them, the DVD, the Blu-ray, online, however you can find it. Basically, link it up at the 0.0000, basically all zeros across the board, the 0.0 mark, and when Tiki says 1, 2, 3, go on go, so we don't have any Riggs and Murtaugh confusion here. When he says go, hit the play button. And we'll be off to the races, and hopefully we'll sync up as their conversation syncs up with the movie. But if not, hopefully just you'll be able to watch this and like, oh man, they're saying so. They're approaching it very linearly, and I can follow along what they're saying. You never know.
All right, folks. So without further ado, let's get to it. The Death of Superman in 1, 2, 3, go. All right,
No,
enough.
they're using the new intro, which I believe they started with. It was either Wonder Woman or Justice League. They've started using this opening in the movies, even. So now this is the first time they've used it in the animated films. I think DC's trying to go for like a unified front these days, especially with the streaming service they're getting up and running now.
So, Dragon, does that mean that these movies are in continuity with the DCEU? I'm very confused by that.
No, they're not. In no way are they in
Okay.
continuity. I'm just saying. I think DC's just trying to kind of blend, like they're using the same opening to kind of get publicity out like that. That's all I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Like when I say in continuity, I mean again, like basically they're using the same designs, and like there were other Justice League movies that basically
Like this is basically the animated equivalent to the cinematic universe.
Yes, exactly. And they had a cinematic universe off the ground before the actual cinematic universe was off the ground. That's kind of the point. All right, so we start off. Basically, we get kind of a day in the life situation to remind us of Superman's value. It's kind of like a little cold open coda to kind of recap, like, okay, what's day to day life with Superman like? And these gentlemen we have here in the suits here. This is actually a fun idea that you see also in the animated series. These guys are called Intergang. Now they're led by this guy with the very creative mustache here. That is Bruno Ugly Mannheim. That's his name, folks. The nickname is Ugly. Yes. The idea is basically a gangster in Metropolis, because you got to remember, even going back to the George Reeves days of Superman, you always had, actually even since the beginning of Superman many a time went up against like businessmen or crime bosses in suits. That's what he went up against a lot. So this guy. What they did in the comics basically was at some point we had a guy in a suit make a deal with Apocalypse, Darkseid, Apocalypse, Darkseid, all that stuff, and that's where all the technology comes from. And this basically leads to kind of like criminals and syndicates using high-grade technology that could possibly be a match for Superman, basically get away with crime in Metropolis. And what I thought was so clever about this when I was watching, it kind of hit me on our second watch, is like, oh my god, this is so clever because we have Superman going up against like the classic guy in a suit, as well as like a guy in a suit in both ways. Like it's a gangster and a guy in that's why they made like a mechanized suit.
Yeah, and it's good foreshadowing because we have something that, as you said, can actually hurt Superman and be a match for Superman.
Yeah, and what I'm saying, Tiki, as well, is that Doomsday was created to basically the infamous thing about Superman is that he has so many villains that are guys in suits, aside from like Brainiac or like Bizarro Superman. Aside from a handful, he has nowhere near the amount of villains like Batman or the Flash does. So that's what they kind of. So this is basically they're kind of homaging the creation of Doomsday here with the fact of we're tired of guys in suits. We're going to create this big iconic Bane-like villain for Superman to go up against. Now, I know, folks, if anyone's curious, Doomsday did come before Bane. Doomsday did come before Bane, if anyone's curious. But
how dare you compare me to this imbecile? All right.
So, by the way, these two cops, Dan Turpin and Maggie Sawyer, they're kind of the Renee Montoya and Bullock for Superman. That's kind of what their gimmick is there. Maggie Sawyer's an excellent character, by the way. The female cop, she's great, man. They're both great, but Dan Turpin was kind of an homage to Jack Kirby in the animated series. That's what a lot of people remember Dan Turpin from.
Nice. All right, so who's doing our Soup's voice, Dragon? Hit us with some casting here.
Jerry O'Connell.
All right. What do you think about this Superman? I like him. I kind of feel like he's a little bit of a mix between like the Brandon Routh interpretation of the Brandon Routh interpretation of the character, and then kind of Henry Cavill's look.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, Tiki, is that in these in-continuity lines, the biggest problem character was Superman, especially in the first movie. Alan Tudyk played Superman. It's nothing against Alan Tudyk, but just the way they had that Superman was terrible. I hated that. I've never in my life hated
Alan
Superman.
Tudyk is like a weird casting choice for Superman. I mean, I love Alan Tudyk, but...
basically, he kind of played Superman like a bully, and I hated that. It was just like, that's not Superman. And so the point is Superman's just they've always forced the Justice League into movies about members of the Justice League, and that was always a problem I've had with those animated films in the past. And this is the first time they basically realized, we've never done a film focusing on Superman. Yet we just keep having Superman in the background of these movies. So this one finally gave Superman some screen time, and I feel they kind of use that as an excuse of, okay, let's kind of amend our mistakes, and let's just kind of let's do a true blue Superman. Just kind of have we show Superman beloved in the world and such here. Like, of course, we have one of the big One of the great Superman characters, Bibbo Babowski, the unluckiest sailor in Metropolis. This guy's great. He's essentially he's the friendlier Bullock equivalent for Superman.
I
That's
love
really
this guy's arc in the movie, man. Holy crap, it's beautiful.
now Tiki.
Honestly,
All of that is in the comic because Death of Superman is the best Bibbo story you'll ever read because all of this is straight from that book. Tiki. I mean that's the thing. Bibbo is always a beloved. This is the most famous Bibbo story ever with Superman. Just what he does after Superman passes away and all this. This is a good setup though. And like in the comic, it was Bibbo, and basically what's here too is that Bibbo won the lottery, and he basically bought the bar that he frequented, and he turned it into to his own bar. In this case, a bar and grill, which is kind of a good update. I think a lot of people complain that why didn't we set this in the 90s? But again, if we're doing like the in-continuity line, it has to be modern day. But I like how we had a few little updates here and there and updates that made sense. You know, like it weren't updates that just made you long for the 90s. It were updates that made sense because one of the biggest gripes I had with the original because Death of Superman, folks, as much as we talk it up, it's not a perfect story by any stretch. It's filled with 90s cheese, and that's the thing. You have 90s cheese
it's more an iconic moment than it is a great story.
Yeah, I mean, again, the best section of that story is the whole, like, the world mourning Superman. That's the best section of that story. And I guess the last part of the death, you know, like when he actually gets killed off, like the moment itself. So what I'm getting at, Tiki, is that one of my favorite, basically, I view this movie as like an under the red hood update where you get somebody to kind of change the story in ways that make sense, you know? Where we're not slavishly.
It's not just like a direct, like kind of like Zack Snyder Watchmen style adaptation where it's like, all right, here's this scene and this scene and this scene and this scene.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, one of the biggest, most welcome changes to this that made a lot of sense to me is that we didn't use like B-list Justice Leaguers. We used the actual A-list Justice League, which makes those moments. It sells the menace of Doomsday even more. It's taken all the iconic members of the Justice League. And again, it's like these. If you want to build in like characters that you know like the back of your hand, well, there you go. You have like a laundry list of them. Then characters you risk people not knowing, like Guy Gardner and Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, which again they're cool characters, but not a lot of people are going to know them.
I know all of those characters.
I mean, beyond that too, like Fire and Ice, and there were like a number of others too. It was
okay. Point taken.
So, fun fact. So the casting in this movie, we've never seen Lois Lane in the in-continuity line, so they finally introduced her, which is another kind of hook of why they were kind of making the most of the in-continuity setting. They actually did some really smart casting because Jerry O'Connell in real life is married to Rebecca Romijn, you know, Mystique from the X-Men movies. And that's who they got for Lois Lane. So they played on kind of the real life married kind of chemistry that they have for the relationship between Clark and Lois in the movie.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Dragon, it's a high point for me. I love probably my favorite scene in the movie is the diner scene, and you know what I'm talking about, the note.
Great scene. I gotta tell you, Rebecca Romijn, I thought did an excellent job as Lois Lane. Basically, I just love this take on Lois. You know, what I really like about it is that, of course, to me, Dana Delaney is always going to be Lois Lane. But by the same token, what I really respect about this Lois is that they kind of did things like they always skirted around the relationship in the animated series, which is really kind of one of my first forays into Superman outside of like kind of everyone knows, you know, the Christopher Reeve Superman. Aside from that, it was like, okay, the first in-depth Lois Lane was that they never, it was always like Superman doesn't have time to be in a relationship with her, but he likes her. And this is kind of like, okay, what if Clark and Lois actually got into a relationship? So they're kind of taking it to the place I always wanted to see him take it in the animated series. That was kind of nice.
And I like how all the characters and all the situations are a little bit more adult than you see in like the DC animated universe proper. And it's kind of like an Elseworld sort of thing. Not really, but I do kind of appreciate the fact that even though this is in continuity, I can kind of look at it as like, okay, I'm familiar with the story, I'm familiar with the beats. Now let's see it being told in kind of a unique and different sort of way.
I mean, that's the great thing about this, Tiki, is that, again, because they had done nothing with Superman up to this point, you know, we have, like, we're basically we're introducing Superman's backstory in this in-continuity line, where even if you knew nothing about it, you can come into this just as a first-time Superman movie, where, okay, they're explaining, you know, he's explaining to Lois that he came from Krypton, and basically she knows that he's from Krypton, basically the Kryptonian archive, his parents. Like she introduces him to his parents as Superman, of course, later on as Clark Kent. But we're kind of like we introduced the Fortress of Solitude by the very end of this movie, so we're introducing iconic elements of Superman as like a first time go around, and it kind of feels natural and like kind of a Superman kind of paint by numbers in a good way.
Uh-huh.
So I really like the choice that Superman and Lois Lane, they're not an item, but Clark and Lois are, which is kind of nice that she's kind of getting involved in kind of like the man behind the costume before the man in the costume. But there's still something there. It's like she likes Superman, but she doesn't love him.
Well, I think he's just a little bit too larger than life, and just the idea of him is,
I do love. There was like a touch of Captain America, like MCU. Steve Rogers applied to the Superman, which I really liked, and it's about darn time that DC do this with Superman. Right. And we get kind of like a Superman who's like, "Hey, Superman!" Like people saying hi and waving to him. Superman as the happy-go-lucky symbol in the DC universe.
Way to go, Soups!
That's what I'm saying. It's about time we do stuff like that, and we're finally
okay,
doing
so I love the timing on that gag right there with Clark.
It reminds me of Donner Superman, where kind of he says "Good night, Lois," and of course Clark Kent's at the door in like 5 seconds. Again, I like the update on Superman here. It's kind of a modern take on Clark Kent just wearing this gray jacket instead of like the trench coat or the suit,
Uh-huh.
And again, it's such kind of a refreshing, aspired kind of change-up of things that, again, like, she's first and foremost romantically involved with Clark Kent, which, again, you usually see it the other way. It's kind of a fun little, like, okay, this is different.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that I was talking about where, all right, this is kind of like a loose, different interpretation of the story. I like where this is going. Let's see where we're headed. And I also like that, we're kind of keeping the secret identity thing at play. There's stakes to that.
Yeah, I think we're establishing status quo in a natural, very economic way. Because, again, they are taking their time with this more than they had. Because, again, here's the thing. A lot of people have been comparing and contrasting this, as they probably should, with Superman Doomsday, which, again, they already attempted this story before. So you have like a good kind of barometer of, okay, where did they go wrong in the first place? And how are they going about changing that the second go-around? Where, again, we have the same story beats of, okay, Clark and Lois are kind of like Superman and Lois Lane were entering a relationship. They're having relationship issues before he's about to get killed off. And we're doing that here, but from a completely different angle. And again, you get it, you're able to live in it more. Then it's like you have like maybe 5 minutes tops. If 5 minutes or less in like Superman Doomsday and here, like you're kind of living with the problem and you're kind of feeling the relationship more. You're emotionally involved. Right.
Like basically the first half of the movie is the relationship, is kind of the the puzzle pieces being put into play essentially.
And again, considering the fact that, again, in the first place, they wanted to tell the big, the identity revealing story and getting them to a place where they would be married, like a huge step in their relationship. And then, then of course, we got to kill Superman idea. Like, okay, let's kill him to delay it. It kind of retroactively, it always worked as like, here's the big dramatic, like, oh, they were so close and then death.
Right.
Again, Jerry O'Connell, like, don't get me wrong, they brought Jerry O'Connell on. The ideas they've been keeping Jerry O'Connell on as Superman after the Alan Tudyk first go-around. And he's been living in the role, and I think by this point he has a mastery over the role. He's much more comfortable in the role, and he's getting a lot more to do than just be, okay, there's Superman in the corner. So here we have a Cyborg and his father, and they have issues. And pretty much what you get in Justice League, the movie, is kind of what you see. It's kind of what they did here, like he saved his life after, basically Apocalypse factored into things, but he doesn't have a mother box in him like the movie.
Okay.
Okay, so this guy's going to be important. Now we kind of set up our characters for the next movie here. And I love how we work them in here. So we set up the Kryptonian nanny, essentially. That's Eradicator. We kind of subverted the whole, Jor-El in the crystal with, okay, again, that's kind of a cool setup for the next guy without doing combat. Again, we're changing a few details. And here, this is John Henry Irons. Now, John Henry Irons...
Yeah, for sure.
John Henry Irons, he's voiced by Cress Williams, and if anyone's watching Black Panther now, which they should be, because it's a great... I'm sorry. If anyone's... Darn it.
Black Lightning.
Yeah, Black Light, darn it. If anyone's watching Black Lightning right now, they should. Cress Williams does the voice of John Henry Irons.
Black Panther was a TV show. Who caused a revolution?
Will you stop with the...
Of course. All right.
So it's kind of fun that he was created for Death of Superman. Retroactively, what they do now, whenever you reinterpret the Death of Superman story, they work in John Henry Irons ahead of time, and that he and Superman have like a banter. They've met each other at a certain point. Therefore, it explains why he kind of wants to take on the mantle of Superman when he's gone. So again, it makes a lot of sense.
Gotcha.
This kind of something that's been done in the story since Death of Superman. Again, they're kind of doing that here, and it's kind of nice. Like John Henry Irons is kind of fanboying about Superman.
Now, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, Dragon, I assume our boy is kind of in a similar situation.
Absolutely. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to approach in the next movie, but I know what they're setting up with them at the very least. I know what we're doing with them.
Okay.
So again, Lex Luthor is an interesting beast here. Where Lex Luthor, he was in Superman Doomsday, and
I gotta say, I really like this Luthor because he's a bit more bumbling. He's a bit more just kind of like, stumbling over himself to win at this point. He's desperate to get a win over Superman.
Yes, Rainn Wilson does the voice of Lex Luthor. I think he does an excellent job.
He does. He really does. I think he twists it up quite a bit from the usual Luthor performance. I think he's a lot more lighthearted in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, he's very egotistical. He has like that just right amount of egotisticalness about Lex Luthor,
Yep.
So again, this is my kind of Lex Luthor scene, by the way. Like for the first episode of Superman the Animated Series, like the big 3-part episode, whatever. The ending of that was he's hovering outside of Lex Luthor's balcony, and he's just like kind of chastising him. I always love those kind of scenes between Lex and Superman. We kind of do that here, where Superman knows that Lex is up to no good. And by the way, a little fun fact with John Henry Irons is that the idea that they've retroactively done with John Henry Irons, and they kind of facilitated here, and I love how the interconnected web we're kind of laying out here, is that John Henry Irons usually he accidentally developed weapons that fell into the wrong hands, and Superman saved him and kind of inspired him at the same time. And what we've done here is that John Henry Irons quit LexCorp because the weapons had fallen into the wrong hands, and of course we're setting up a lot of Lex Luthor stuff. And in that scene that's just passed, we kind of foreshadow the events of the next movie where he's told Lex, like, they're never going to love you for hating me, which, of course, we're going to have 4 very Superman who are not up to par, that the world, especially Lex, will hate. And Lex is kind of hoisted on a pedestal by the end of this movie.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay, I love this gag.
Oh, yeah, Steve Lombard.
That had me cracking up, Dragon.
Hey! So Lois's gal pal here. This is Cat Grant. Now, Cat Grant, she's in Supergirl. A lot of people know her as Callista Flockhart in Supergirl. She's one of the Daily Planet characters. She's a good character. She's fun. She's the media side of things. And I wonder. Here's the thing. They did kind of a weird change here, but I wonder if they were fusing 2 characters together because traditionally Cat Grant is not black. But there is another character, especially in the animated series, but there's another character by the name of Angela Chen, who was a black news anchor. And I wonder if they mix and match, or they just want to do kind of a fresh kind of like, let's refresh the design of Cat Grant a little. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go, folks.
Oh, here's our boy, folks. Here's our boy.
Wonderful Patrick Fabian. So when I heard Patrick Fabian was announced for this movie, and I heard that he was announced
as... He only has one scene, but it's a great scene.
I know. Oh my God, I love. Well, technically, has 2 scenes on. They're both fantastic. So Fabian did an excellent job as Hank Henshaw, and the idea here is that Hank Henshaw is going to become the cyborg Superman. Now, from what I understand, they're not going to use him as the voice, but I don't know if they're going to bring Fabian back in the next one or not. I hope they are, but because I know they're going to have O'Connell, because it's supposed to look like Superman. So they're going to get O'Connell do the voice. But again, the idea is this guy, again, this might be a spoiler for the next movie, but in the comics, this is the way it goes, folks. I'm sorry. Is that, again, might be a big subversion in the next movie. I don't know. Is that, let me talk about the approach to Henshaw, and I'll get back to that. But I love the optimism to a fault of Fabian's performance here. And it leads to this phenomenal, tragic moment that's so Shakespearean and so beautiful. I mean, he just sold you so hard. I'm like, he's just this. he's just like, oh yeah, I saw Superman once. Yeah, I just kind of hope he's just this optimistic astronaut. I mean, we heard Patrick Fabian say Space Rangers. I'm more than happy
Oh God.
in this movie. And of course, folks, are huge Fabian fans, but he just this character he plays of like the ardent Superman supporter in space. So like an astronaut who's seen Superman in action from the surface and who's been saved by him once, and therefore he has like a built-in faith in Superman. And we raised this really great idea with him, which we'll get to when we get to his ultimate fate. But right now, let me talk about this. So this is important to me. Lex Luthor in this red wig and goatee here, this red wig and beard. So in the comic, that's thing. So Superman Doomsday, they had Lex Luthor in that story, but in the comic, Death of Superman, Lex Luthor wasn't technically in that story. He had a clone who was Alexander Luthor Jr., which, as you know, they kind of referenced in Batman v Superman with the whole Alexander Luthor Jr. angle.
Uh-huh.
So the idea is like Luthor wasn't in that story, but his like red-haired kind of clone was there along with like a clone of Supergirl. It was like really weird. Again, 90s, this is what I'm talking about, 90s cheese, but I like how they referenced it here in a kind of a clever way of, okay, we're not going to do all that convoluted stuff, but hey, we have clones, we don't need to make everybody a clone, which is Luthor with like a wig to kind of go under house arrest with.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, nice.
All right. So what do you think of the gravity comparison here, Dragon? Because I couldn't help but sort of think like, yeah, someone's maybe a little inspired.
Well, here's the thing. I thought it was more of a reference.
No, space debris heading right towards us.
I found it more of a reference to Superman 2, where we have like the astronauts, like Planet Houston, like all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of read it as. So this is when we cut back. Of course, I love Lex when he enters the room. This is kind of Lex Luthor I can get behind, the kind of Luthor I wanted to see on the big screen when we had kind of things announced. Luthor, who's like the smartest guy in the room, who insults everybody around him, who's like, you buy the smartest guy in the room.
Uh-huh.
But I really do like Luthor and his. It has this really phenomenal line here where he says, we're going to find the next alien Ubermensch and crush it in its infancy. That is a great line to summarize what Lex Luthor is all about. He doesn't want another Superman, so basically he's looking out for any new aliens that could become heroes or menaces. Like, he doesn't want any chance of another Superman on the planet.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, like, Rainn Wilson, he's got that crassness, and he plays the smartest yet cruelest. He plays the smartest yet cruelest guy in the world, in the room, more accurately, and that's what Rainn Wilson's channeling with his take on Lex here. So, getting back to space for a moment here. So we basically build to this beautifully tragic moment coming up here with this desperate man waiting for Superman to save him, and it's like Patrick Fabian giving such an award-winning read, and I love it so much. Which is, "Don't worry, Terry, Superman will save us." It's heartbreaking.
Right.
And I love the idea that, and basically, this is what I interpret that this is going to do for the next movie, what they're kind of facilitating it here. And I think this is brilliant. When this happens, like, oh my God, that's such a good idea. One of my favorite ideas in the movie is they're speaking to the age-old question with Superman of like, the over-dependence issue about Superman, of like, people count on Superman too much to save them, and that this guy, Superman saved him. In doing so, he thinks, okay, Superman's, he's so strong, he's super strong, he's super fast, like he can be there, he's Superman, for crying out loud. He's going to save everybody. Why wouldn't he be able to save everybody? It's kind of that question we flirt with so phenomenally in the Donner films, the whole, all these powers and I couldn't even save him. It's like that kind of question. Superman can't be everywhere at once, and I imagine this is going to be what's fueling Cyborg Superman's fire in the next movie. He's going to want revenge on Superman, if not be better than Superman. Like, he failed me, I'm not going to fail anybody else, which of course would lead into kind of like the obsessive evil Superman idea. I mean, that's great. Of course, like, Superman, I knew you'd save us. Splam, bam, Doomsday kills him.
I mean, you can't get much more dramatic than that, right?
I mean, that's
okay. And from this point on, Dragon, the whole movie turns into a fucking action scene, and I kind of love it. We get like 25 minutes of build up.
And again, Tiki, we're making
perfectly paced.
I keep citing Under the Red Hood, but this is what I'm talking about here. We're making smart story choices aside from like, we're not just adapting it for the sake of adapting it. We're making smart choices. Like, okay, if we're gonna do the traditional Justice League, which why not? How do we work in Doomsday? How do we make it we get Doomsday to Metropolis in a believable way? Okay, so he's on the he's in an asteroid instead of like being buried in the Earth. He's from space anyway, so he lands in the planet and he lands in the ocean. Who's in the ocean? Aquaman. Makes sense.
Also Godzilla.
Well, sure.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
On holiday. So yeah. By the way, so that asteroid, when that asteroid killed, it hit Hank Henshaw. In the comic, the way that goes, from what I recollect, it's that the metal and stuff that Doomsday is attached to that asteroid. That's going to be what turns him into a cyborg. That's at least the idea from what the comic did. We'll see how it goes in the next movie, I guess.
So it sounds like what you're saying is he's got like a perma liquid skeleton.
Yeah, it's like there's barely any
liquid metal, like, you know.
Yeah, it's like there are barely any pieces of him. It's kind of like a RoboCop thing. It's like RoboCop meets the Terminator, essentially. There might be some human parts there, but the majority of him is robotic and from that asteroid. He was asteroid and parts from the space shuttle. That's the idea. That's what made the metal for the Superman.
Gotcha.
All right, so of course, I'll bet you all King Midas is silver, Tiki, that we have Cheetah in this movie for kind of the Wonder Woman appeal of it all. That Wonder Woman's doing really big right now, and the next movie's going to have Cheetah in it. I think that's why we have kind of Wonder Woman sparring with the kind of the hologram of Cheetah.
Yeah, I could see that. Of course, hype for Wonder Woman in general is really up, and I think this movie is no exception to that. Really, I think Wonder Woman is in good form here.
So, Wonder Woman, voiced by Rosario Dawson.
Yes.
We need Rosario Dawson in everything. She's great as Batgirl in the Lego Batman. She's, Claire Temple in the MCU. I mean, she's great everywhere. So, also, I want to mention this because so you know, the idea is that in the in-continuity films, like the New 52, which is where they got the whole idea for it, Superman and Wonder Woman did date. They had dated before he got involved with Lois Lane. That was kind of like the new, fresh idea. So, and the idea is that Wonder Woman was never, again, she's an Amazon princess, not ashamed of who she is. So she's not one for the alter ego. So she just kind of clashed with kind of the whole Clark Kent Superman, double identity thing. So that's kind of why that relationship kind of fizzled out. So that's kind of the idea there.
Ooh, okay.
The Jaws-like entrance of Doomsday.
Definitely. I love the build-up. And like I said, Dragon, I really appreciate the fact that there's so much action in this movie, and the fact that, we really do get going on it.
I mean, it does replicate the comic better than that other animated attempt at
most certainly.
Yeah. Where that's the thing, because again, it's like it is one giant action sequence building to the end-all be-all of action sequences, where basically Superman Doomsday is like, okay, the first act's an action sequence, then we're doing the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry. I just want to mention this too. I love one of my favorite things about this movie, because one of the coolest things from the Death of Superman comic is this design of Doomsday, where he's in this big green kind of jumpsuit, like covered from head to toe. You don't know what this thing looks like until the big action scene, until the big showdown, more accurately. We didn't have that in Superman Doomsday. Don't get me wrong, that design of Doomsday was cool, but we've never gotten 100%, especially in Batman v Superman. We've never gotten a good Doomsday design. And now we're doing this is right off the page initially here. He's in that. I just love him in that head to toe jumpsuit. It looks so great. And it's a cool design in itself. And then it kind of gets more interesting as it goes on. I got to tell you, I kind of like it better than the redesign of Doomsday we have at the very end. I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, but that just speaks to my problem with the in-continuity things on the whole. That even with Suicide Squad, I mean, I don't like the design work on this. The art. I'm sorry, not the design work. The art style on the in-continuity stuff, whenever we have remember the armored suits from the beginning?
I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't mind the art style, but it just doesn't really pop for me. You know what I mean? It's not visually offensive or anything like that.
Well, I'm just saying I'm sorry, go on.
No, it just doesn't really have any sort of real stylistic flair to it. It's just kind of and to tell you the truth, Dragon, Gotham by Gaslight, I kind of feel had a similar vibe going on. The only thing that saved Gotham by Gaslight for me from an animation perspective was the settings and kind of the the production design in that movie. So this is it really is just kind of it's a solid movie, solid story, and good action and everything. But you're right, the animation is a little bumpy along the way.
Well, let me
It's not the highlight.
I disagree with the Gotham by Gaslight part, but that's not what
I know you do. I know you do. That's neither here nor there.
exactly. My point though is that the whole I think you're absolutely on the money with the design problem, Tiki, is that again it's just nothing special. And the fact of the matter is, and the reason I harp on it, Tiki, is because basically they have to because of that little incontinuity thing, they have to maintain that stuff from the first movie to all of them now. So that's why they don't really have a lot of room to make it special. So like these little things like putting Doomsday in the jumpsuit goes a long way. In the grand scheme of things, where we have those god awful looking, I mean, the suits that enter gangs in at the beginning, those are just generic robot suits. Like there's nothing really special about them. That's basically what they want to harp on. This they've been trying to do right for a number of these movies. I think they finally got it right here, like little board meetings. And I love a good board meeting when you can do it right, like kind of the mundanities of being a superhero. And the Justice League would have to do this sort of stuff, but I do like the little gag of like I've been dying to see this in a movie for years, like Wonder Woman having. Again, this is something they've been trying to do as well, like the whole like Wonder Woman's basically kind of the popular hero out of the bunch of them, and the fact that she's selling Wonder Woman dolls and Wonder Woman merchandise. I just love the fact that she's getting a piece of that, and then she's like saying, "Hey, maybe if the Wayne Foundation falls short, maybe I could." I love that, but this is all fun banter to me. What do you think about this banter here, like the whole PTA meeting joke and everything?
Yeah, it's good. I think that every character kind of gets their moment. You know what I mean? This is clearly a Superman movie at the forefront, but every Justice League member, gets a chance to shine. And I think that's a good call. Flash, of course, has some good comedic one-liners and bits that he's involved in. I think Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter get some really cool action beats. Of course, Diana's a pretty big part of the story. So, I definitely think that when all is said and done, the Justice League characters are pretty well used.
Everyone, that's the thing. They finally gave everyone like something to do when they're on the Justice League instead of them just being like, okay, well, we have to put them in the movie because it's called Justice League something or other. Because they always the Aquaman movie is called Justice League Throne of Atlantis, where it's like, okay, well, we have to work in Justice League now. Anyway, but yeah, I agree with that. Also, Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern, by the way, which is
of course. Oh man,
I love it.
Dragon, I've been on a Captain Horrible a Doctor Horrible kick recently, so I've fallen back in love with Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, Nathan Fillion, basically, he's a fan. He's like the Kevin, how Kevin Conner was Batman. Basically, Nathan Fillion was is the favorite Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Basically, as much as they can in these projects. In continuity or not, they try to get Nathan Fillion, which I think is a smart choice because he's a great Green Lantern. So this is a nice scene here. I like that because Ma and Pa Kent both were in the Death of Superman. They had very emotional.
They try so hard, Dragon. They try so hard, but they're just not getting the full picture here.
Sure, and again, like the big moment I'm referring to here, they build to a huge emotional moment towards the end of this movie. That is from the book, and it's heartbreakingly beautiful. But it's heartbreakingly sad, I should say. What I'm saying, it's like, oh my god, it's so sad, it's so accurate. But yeah, I like the humanity here, and this is what I'm talking about with the Rebecca Romaine performance of it all here. I love just she has such humanity about her, which Lois Lane, she can walk a line of like being like the cynical reporter versus like the girl that you could buy that Superman would fall in love with. And I think you absolutely get that here. Yeah, she wants to know about Clark Kent. She's charmed by the rural Smallville parents here. This is a fun fact too. I noticed I think it's a meta gag here that Clark Kent has a thing for girls with the initials LL because we have Lana Lang, we have Lori Lemaris, Lemaris. And by the way, what Pa Kent's joking about there is that Lori Lemaris is a mermaid. By the way, that's why they're saying she was quite a catch.
I think I knew that, Dragon. Yeah.
Kind of a vaguely Dean Cain look for Superman here.
I could see it. I like that. I've been trying to place my finger on which interpretation of Superman he reminds me of. At first, I was going the Brandon Routh.
I think you're right about Brandon Routh, though. I think that first and foremost is that Superman. But you're right. I think it's kind of a blend of those two. I mean, there is one of these. I think Superman. Superman Unbound. That one has the most Dean Cain looking Superman you've ever seen in animation. I'll tell you that much. But yeah.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, the fact again, I don't know about you, but I think we're all entrenched with kind of the relationship drama going on here. It doesn't feel like tacked on. It doesn't feel like okay, we have to get him to a certain place. It feels like yeah, there's kind of a problem here. Clark's keeping he's keeping a secret, not necessarily the identity, but he's kind of keeping that barrier.
It's to the point where I almost feel like it does it so well that you're as invested in this stupid relationship drama as you are in Doomsday to a certain extent. Especially in those scenes that we're going to get to later. It really is a tight balancing act there.
I mean, again, you have to care about Superman, otherwise you're not going to miss him till he's gone. It's yeah, you should feel the bump of like, oh no, these two kids are just about to get together, and then he dies.
Oh God.
So I mean, again, this is one of my favorite kind of updates in terms of adapting. And it's not a straight translation; it's a good adaptation and adapting it here. I love the straight line of okay, Doomsday lands in the ocean. He goes for a straight line to Metropolis because the idea is he's targeting life along the way, and that leads him down the path. Like in the book, the idea is let me run through. Okay, I'll save when we get more to the Doomsday here. Right. Doomsday has a real funky backstory. This is a really beautiful scene between Martha and Clark here. The idea we didn't raise you to be alone. I mean, that's just kind of like a beautiful little button to hit on the scene here. Jennifer Hale doing the voice of Ma Kent here. So all the emotional and human stuff in the movie, they had two animation studios. The in-house studio that usually does these, they did the emotional stuff. And the action scenes are done by a really great overseas studio, Studio Mir. Now, Studio Mir, they do the animation for like some of the best fighting animations. Honestly, some of the best animation you've seen from Legend of Korra. Like they were one of Korra's A-list animation studios that they used. And basically all that Superman versus Doomsday stuff, that's all Studio Mir, and that looks great. And we'll get there.
Yeah, hey, sorry, I cut out for a minute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I kind of noticed
you. Sorry about that. Yeah. I don't know what happened. My computer just froze for a second. What's your timestamp right now, Dragon?
My timestamp is 37 minutes.
Oh, wonderful. Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm on Batman versus Robin for some reason. Let me go back.
Okay. Oh, speaking of, just to make that relevant, so Pete Tomasi, who I've actually met the writer of this movie. Nice guy. Pete Tomasi, one of the famous things that he made Damian Wayne likable. He made the Robin in that movie a likable character. Grant Morrison created him the old age-old things like his Batman having an assassin son, which is very un-Batman-like. But he made Damian Wayne likable, and basically Batman having to rehabilitate a son who's an assassin. It's kind of a compelling story, and he kind of made him likable, gave him a pet, really all this great stuff there. So these and of course the guy who did the readapted kind of Death of Superman in the comics again. He was a perfect choice for this movie. I thought he did an excellent job.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Also with the
timestamp, Dragon, timestamp.
Timestamp 38 minutes and 20 seconds.
30. Okay, geez, I'm a little behind. Hold on.
The bear scene kind of happened already. I just want to mention that traditionally in the Death of Superman, whatever we adapted to, is always a scene of Doomsday killing an animal. Because in the book,
is like 39:21. All right, tell me when 39:21 comes up.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Like in the book, they're like Doomsday extended his hand and like he crushed a little baby bird. And in Superman,
no, I'm Kevin Wateo, and I crushed Kim Wexler, the little baby bird, with my workload. Oh, again, I'm so sorry, Kim.
Again, you're thinking of Lethal Weapon, the TV series. Anyway,
I know. I'm just kind of like blending the two.
Oh no, I'm aware. I love that coffee bit in the animation, by the way. It's the bumbling Clark Kent with like the two coffees.
Seriously, I'll never think of little baby bird without thinking of Kim Wexler.
Right now.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, anyway, what I was saying. So yeah, the whole like thing of Doomsday killing an animal, and like in the other anime film, he killed a deer. So he's always killing something. In this case, he killed a bear. So Doomsday is not a fan of the Revenant.
He's a straight up Davy Crockett.
Yep.
Killed himself a bar when he was only 3. All right.
Doomsday Crockett. Give him a little hat.
Doomsday Crockett. He's gonna kill Superman.
I like the banter, and again, because they had an intimate relationship, it kind of makes sense that they have like kind of this interplay, Wonder Woman and Clark here, where they're they have like this. Are you telling me it's almost the history that they have here, and it's like saying, is that your way of telling me that the stay out of it, the butt out? Yeah, and it's that little sly smile that Clark has. It's adorable. Yep. So friendly. Okay, Carlin Heights. It's a reference to kind of the Godfather Superman, Mike Carlin, one of the go-to writers of Superman for the ages, and one of the writers who worked on Death of Superman, the comic.
Okay, so you know what's distracting as fuck, Dragon?
What?
That Valero station that doesn't have the Valero logo, but it has the Valero colors.
Right. That's a rights issue, you know that, can't you?
It's Dragon, I swear to God, I know it's a small little detail, but every time they cut to that gas station, I'm thinking like, that's weird because it should be a product placement, but it's not. Like it should be a Denny's type situation, right? Or I'm sorry, an IHOP type situation.
Right.
Anyways.
Okay, real quick, let me talk about the convoluted origin of Doomsday here. So the idea of Doomsday is that Doomsday...
Really? Okay, go ahead.
So Doomsday, in case you don't know this, Tiki, Doomsday on Krypton, like 200, like roughly hundreds of years before Krypton established like a Kryptonian society, like hundreds of years ago on Krypton, hundreds of thousands of years ago, I should say, like 250,000 years ago, roughly. Pre-Krypton, there was a doctor who wanted to create the perfect survivor, like the perfect survivor life form. So he created like a baby, and he kept cloning this baby. I'm sorry, real quick. Hawkman save, awesome.
Yes,
Hawkman, here's the thing. Hawkman does not say a word in this movie, but they put him in here because he's awesome. But more so, they needed his weapon. They needed like the nth metal mace, which is the only thing conceivably that could like hurt Doomsday, like kind of crack the uniform and everything. So that's why he's in this movie, in case anyone's curious, because Hawkman just looks cool and he has a weapon that could be useful against Doomsday. Anyway, what I'm saying about Doomsday himself here is that the origin of Doomsday is that the scientists kept killing this baby and cloning it again, and what he'd do is like the baby would not be able to be killed by what killed it. It would adapt to each death, so it would be unkillable.
Oh man.
And this kept happening. He basically kept cloning it for decades. And this life form, this survivor, hated everything and started targeting all life because it grew. Hated death so much. It kept being abused and killed so many times. And eventually, it escaped and it basically was killed. It killed globally in like different planets. And eventually, was kind of strapped to an asteroid and kind of launched through space. And hence where he is now.
Uh-huh.
Basically, again, it's the ultimate physical threat for Superman to go up against here. And again, this is cool right here. That again, the Green Lantern. I love we have this moment. Green Lantern realizes, I fight aliens all the time. Why wouldn't I go up against this guy?
Right.
And again, we're building up the menace. Again, this is the great payoff of using the A-list Justice League members. Of okay, if Hal Jordan, the guy with some of the strongest will that fuels that ring, creates a barrier, this thing breaks through like it was glass. You know you have a problem. And we keep amping this up each time with each person that he's taken down. And, again, really great action sequences here where, again, like he just keeps systematically lining him up and taking him out like this to keep being lumped next to this dumpster here. Flash with the nth metal mace. Again, he's making a dent in Doomsday here, but it can only go so far. And again, some solid logical action of how the Justice League would go about pacifying Doomsday. One, Batman's on crowd control. He's making sure the people...
Okay, really, I'm sorry, really quick. I love this bit with Flash.
Yeah.
Flash has some really good action moments. I'm sorry, Dragon. I'm kind of caught up in the action right now. It is really good, really well staged.
And that's what I'm saying. I like that everyone has like a good role and like...
Yeah, it's vaguely Avengers-esque.
And I like
I'm not saying it's on the same level of the Avengers. I'm just saying it's vaguely Avengers-esque with how everyone has a contributing role.
And again, I like with the contributing roles. I like that Batman, he's on crowd control. Like, he's giving the orders, like, okay, we got to protect some people, and then we're going to target it, like, systematically. And, of course, like, Batman does have... I like that Batman's the guy who, like, he throws the explosives that reveals Doomsday. Like, he kind of breaks away the costume, so he's doing something, and he's doing kind of the classic... Batman can't go up against Doomsday, but he can outmaneuver him, and that's cool. All right, so this guy, Dabney Donovan, the idea is that Luthor, he's in league with Cadmus. Cadmus is like kind of the cloning scientist brigade, if you will. Just kind of evil science division, and hence all these clones that eventually will like breed something like bizarre Superman down the line, you know?
Oh, man.
This guy's like kind of one of the rogue scientists of Cadmus that Luthor has employed, and he's making all these crazy, creepy clones, and this guy just like the creepiest mustache you've ever seen, like... terms of mustache.
Right. I was gonna say, Dragon, I was gonna bring that up, but I didn't know if it was gonna be appropriate or not. So thank you for addressing it. I mean, it's just like, oh my god, you could like freaking catch I don't know. Anyways, okay, I mean, so back to the action. I really like your point about Batman evading Doomsday. That's great. As you said, they all have their kind of special skill sets that they bring into this fight.
Hey, it's like nothing unbelievable in the fight here. It's just really good action and does make sense. It's grounded in good logic here. Where again, we even saw a little bit of this in Batman v Superman, where Batman's evading Doomsday, but we're doing it even better here.
Right.
Again, throwing the explosives, revealing the costume. Again, we're getting some good glimpses of Doomsday here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up too, because I really like how the gradual progression of, at first he's like a costume supervillain. By the end of it, he's a monster, and there's no doubt about it. He's a force of nature.
Absolutely. And again, a force of nature you could believe that could kill Superman without an ounce of kryptonite on the guy. So of course, Bibbo here. I
love this guy, dude. It makes me want to read the comic.
I told you, Tiki. He's again, it's like a friendlier Harvey Bullock, essentially. It's kind of like, in terms of how iconic the character is with Superman. He's like a Bullock character, but like so friendly and so delightful. He's like the guy. Yeah, so he's like Superman's cheerleader on the side.
Right.
And that's
oh my god, Dragon! Like I said, the moment that it kind of builds to with him is just.
I know.
Genuinely one of the most powerful things I've seen in one of these DC movies, honestly, Dragon.
All the Bibbo stuff that you love is thanks to a little lady who I've had the pleasure of meeting. I met a number of the Death of Superman writers, by the way, at least 3 of them. And I've met Louise Simonson, who's a lovely person, and she wrote all the emotional stuff that you love in the Death of Superman story that made its way in here, like all the emotional Bibbo stuff. That's her. So
okay,
I like
what do you think? We're kind of burying the lead on this big scene right here. Just a little thing called Clark revealing his identity to Lois.
Yeah, I don't know if this bit's gonna. I've tried watching this with some people who weren't necessarily Superman fans, and I think if you have people who like Superman, I think you're gonna like this moment here. I love the way this is played. I really do. I like the. Again, Rebecca Romijn, I think she just sells this so much. I think you need to sell it here, where it's kind of a fun him revealing the identity, and we have. Here's what sells it for me. I love the. She's kind of like talking a mile a minute and realizing, wait, it's so unethical. You wrote stories about yourself. You really need just a few, and I really needed the job. It's like it's a great scene, and it boils down to this very, again, kind of a Steve Rogers moment for Superman here, where he's saying, "Look, Lois, I'm just a guy from a small town who wants to do the right thing." Like, that line, that's Superman to me. Like, yes, that's my guy.
Absolutely, man. I totally agree with you. The writing is definitely on point there. And like I said, this is the kind of stuff, dude. This is my favorite scene in the movie right here. And this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, where even though the action in this movie is really good, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, I care about this stuff just as much.
Absolutely. And of course, it's right before he goes. Again, this is his goodbye to her, essentially, because, until he's in the costume, he won't be able to say goodbye to her. So, by the way, just real quick with the bar and grill. Again, the reason I love the fact it's been updated from a bar to a bar and grill
you're really
to a restaurant.
fixated on that, aren't you, Dragon?
I am, because it wasn't a restaurant before. It was just like a bar.
Restaurant. You can order food now. Oh my god!
No, the fact is, I like that we do.
I tell you, Dragon is a recent convert to foodie. To being a foodie, I can appreciate a good bar and grill. So I hear what you're saying. Yes.
Okay, now, of course, the last secret, I love you. That's sweet.
No, that note might be my single favorite moment in the movie,
That
honestly.
note's great. I mean, you may have been more powerful with the proposal, but wouldn't have made any sense had they done that because you just revealed the identity, and again, it's kind of the beginning of things, so they can't really, can't really be a proposal. It would have been out of the blue. It would have been a little unfair of an
Uh-huh.
ask. But I mean, what I'm saying, the reason, real quick, the reason I fixed it on the Boy and Girl is because I love the fact that, like Balboa, practically, he's going around telling stories about how Superman saved his life and how he helped Superman out. I mean, that to me is the clever, like, oh my god, he's a restaurateur now. It's beautiful.
Right, right.
Okay, let me talk about it. So, Martian Manhunter was never in any of the in continuity films, and it's a crime because the Martian Manhunter is a fantastic
He's
character.
really cool, and he gets a really badass action scene here.
I mean, this Tiki. This is the brilliant idea. One, everybody loves the Martian Manhunter. He's on Supergirl. Everybody loves this character. He's just so
I very
beloved.
much appreciate Martian Manhunter from that one Christmas special we talked about him.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, he's so you never go wrong with the honestly. I can't even think of like a bad version of Martian Manhunter who's that good a character. But here's the thing: I love that it made so much sense of a threat that basically an opponent that Doomsday can't punch because he can
Oh,
turn
by the way,
intangible.
that scream is horrific.
It is, but I mean that's what I'm saying. We do all the hallmarks of the Martian Manhunter in a really great way here. One, he's intangible. Batman's being a strategist with the Martian Manhunter, giving him intel that I'm reading his mind. There's nothing there. It's like he's not
Uh-huh.
human. And again, he can't punch him, but he can see the Martian Manhunter, but he can't punch him. And I love the bit where Martian Manhunter goes to save Batman because he sees that now Batman's being targeted. He saves Batman's life, and then he's thrown into the weakness of the Martian Manhunter, which is fire, which of course is like it's the it without boring you the details, essentially there was a Holocaust on Mars
God.
that was used in fire.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. Well,
A little, by the way, a little Lethal Weapon reference with Batman there, where he basically pops his shoulder back into place like Martin Riggs.
nice.
So, but yeah, that's what I said. The point is, like, use the fire on the Martian Manhunter. Whenever we use fire on the Martian Manhunter, it's always like, oh my god, poor Martian Manhunter. It's
Gotcha. That's a detail I never knew, but I'll take note of it in the
but
future.
even taking that out of the equation, it's still pretty horrific, just with that scream and everything. And Martians and fire do not mix. It's always like there's love. It's such a human fear to have for the Martian Manhunter. He's afraid of fire, and he's weakened to fire.
Uh-huh.
All right, so here, of course, we're showing a lot of love. And again, logically, who's the strongest opponent we have aside from Superman? Wonder Woman. And as we saw in Batman v Superman, like the one who had the best chance of taking out Doomsday was, in fact, Wonder Woman. Who's fought gods and monsters, no pun intended, very well. And again, she's really awesome in this scene, I gotta tell you.
Yep.
Really good action beats here. Just slamming that shield right in the Doomsday's big face there.
God.
Of course, a lot kind of linger on this moment here. I presume it's the fact that it's really not an important thing. I don't know why they really lingered on it the way they did, but we broke the little like hair scrunchie, little ponytail thing that Wonder Woman had, which was like a design thing they worked in continuity films, and we kind of made her look like, I guess, a bit more like classic Wonder Woman with like the longer hair. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the Wonder Woman design in this movie. Like, I don't have any problem with it. It's just I don't necessarily know what they're going for per se.
Yeah, no, it's just they're kind of stuck with it as well.
Right.
Yeah, it is what it is. But again, the fact we get Rosario Dawson as Wonder Woman, they've kept her as Wonder Woman. That's always nice. And again, she really brings Wonder Woman had those nice intimate scenes with Clark, and she has these great scenes of like stop here, monster. Like she's going for the kill with this thing, but even this thing's too strong for Diana.
Uh-huh.
And again, Diana takes such a beating here. Now, importantly, Superman is about to come in for the save here with heat vision, and as I mentioned with the adaptability, Tiki, that's the dangerous thing about Doomsday here, because now Superman uses that heat vision to essentially he kills Doomsday with that heat vision. Doomsday comes back, now immune, and he's developed the ability to replicate the heat vision.
Right.
Which essentially is Superman's undoing here, because he's going to be undone by the heat vision a couple times during this fight. Now, Studio Mir, they did such a great job in staging the upcoming action sequence, the big showdown between Superman and Doomsday. You'll notice
the title kind of says it all in the movie, right? It's like you're expecting it to happen, but at the same time, you're on the edge of your seat hoping it doesn't happen.
I know that's the thing. That's the gamble of this movie. Whenever you do this story like Death of Superman, you got like, okay, we got to sell like a very everyone knows exactly how this movie's going to end.
Right, right.
But we got to really
And
invest
honestly,
people in this.
I think that's why the or the Batman versus Superman thing pissed so many people off, is the fact that it just kind of came out of nowhere. It's like you had one chance to do this and you ruined it by putting it at the end of an already bad, convoluted mess. Like, what are you doing, DC? This is like, it's way more standalone. It's way more of a clean slate to work with to tell the same kind of story. I freaking wish that like the last hour of Man of Steel 2 was this. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, this is really John Peters would appreciate this right here because what they're doing is actually like a street fight thing here where they're basically they're gauging each other as an opponent right now and they're kind of grappling with each other for a moment like they just did. That's them kind of figuring, okay, I'm going to try to shove this guy, but no, he's seeing how strong the other guy is, and of course he uses the heat vision to kind of cheat right there as he blasts him back through the wall, and of course Superman bleeds unassisted. First time. It's like, okay, this guy is not going to go down easy. And right now, this bit here, now I hope they're going to do some other bits like from the book. They're going to do some more Bibbo stuff from the book in the next movie, at the top of the next movie. But if they don't, they're referencing this beautiful bit from the book here where Bibbo, after the influence of Superman, his buddy Superman, he allowed people to take shelter in his
I love that. I love the line, my buddy Soups is always there for us.
I mean, that's the thing. There was this beautiful story, which I really hope they're going to adapt in the next one. But if they don't, at least they referenced it kind of here, is that there was a guy selling like Superman armbands, trying to profit off of the whole death of Superman, like the comics where it was kind of a meta joke. And what happened was Bibbo, he grabbed him by the scruff of his neck. He was about to like beat the guy up, and he said, "Look, during the whole Doomsday fight, my family, I lost my job, and I lost my home, my family were kind of living on the streets." And he offers him a job at the bar. And he allows him shelter in the bar. It's really sweet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like one of those beautiful bits with Bibbo. There's like, oh my god, so adorable. Like he'd give him a noogie and everything. Oh, come here, you can work at the bar. It's like... Now I love working Luthor into all this, by the way, because again we gave Luthor a proactive role instead of just having him like create Doomsday or don't get me wrong, Superman Doomsday had a thing where he unlocked Doomsday and Luthor had like a whole identity crisis where I led to Superman getting killed, but not by my hand. In this case, this is a Luthor who's going to use this to his advantage of, okay, I'm going to help Superman, and I'm going to get all the glory. I'm going to get out of my little house arrest, and things go wonderfully for Luthor in this movie.
Uh-huh.
Of course, Luthor always does have like a Lex suit, has like a power suit of some kind, and we do kind of an update, an homage to that here. Basically kind of Lex's version of an Iron Man suit,
Okay, I love this kid with a video game. I think is that from anything, Dragon, or is it for this movie?
Okay. Well, one, there's a little Superman bobblehead, which I really like. There's usually in the first movie, many times like in the Death of Superman, like Superman was saving it. There's always an element of Superman saving a kid during the big Doomsday Superman fight.
Okay.
So you had that there, and Superman Doomsday, the first animated movie, they had a big moment where right before he killed Doomsday, he saved Doomsday's about to kill a little girl, and they lifted him into space, and that's how that fight ended. I love this was one of my favorite saves in the entire movie here, where he saved that woman in the car just now. It's like he's put his hands between both cars at the very last segment, where again Superman preventing collateral human damage throughout this fight, and I love that. That's what we need with Superman. Yeah,
and the action is just coming like hot and heavy. I really like that one shot where we see the action taking place from the woman's point of view in the car.
And exactly. See, I love we have like the emotion in the heart of the fight of like it's what Superman does first and foremost to save people. And as
we're basically seeing the fight from different people's vantage points throughout the last 20 minutes or so.
Exactly. Now they tried. Now one, I love the logic of the fight, where again, very classically, Superman he's trying to approach this smartly, where he's trying he's tying Doomsday up to the bridge. He's trying to pacify this guy so he can save people, then get back to business with this guy. He's trying to kind of pacify him for the moment, if not take him out quick. So again, so people don't get killed in the process here, which is smart. Of course, it leads to this really beautiful bit where he saves the kid coming up here. This kid going again. It's kind of like that kid from the first Spider-Man movie, just kind of standing around. But in this case, like he's going for the game. Like, go to your mom, kid. Don't go.
Well, you know what? At least going for the game is a little bit more of a legitimate, like, that's what a little kid would do instead of just, like, standing around waiting to get killed.
True, it does make more sense. But I love
also, what do you, this is going to sound random, but you know me, I like architecture. You like architecture. What do you think of the bridge? Like, I like how it's like the Golden Gate Bridge, but with more lights.
I gotta tell you, yeah, that's not a bad design choice, and I do like how we use the bridge and like tying him up and everything. But yeah, I didn't think about the light thing. You're right, it is kind of a cool touch. It's kind of another world. In DC, they don't really do straightforward New York, or it's kind of like a way of doing Metropolis as like an amalgamation of all like your big tourist, major cities.
Yeah.
And again, like the gleaming city versus like 80s New York that Gotham is.
Right, right.
Of course, this bit here is like so beautiful. It's kind of, again, we're giving Superman. I hate the fact.
I think this to me was the best save of the movie.
Oh no, this is fantastic. The whole like it's going to be okay, son. And of course he hugs him, which is beautiful. Of course, the fact that we're giving, again, in the age of the MCU, we're giving Superman Captain America moments. We're in the first place where he gave Captain America Superman moments.
Oh God.
Oh, wonderfully full circle.
And we also gave Steve Trevor Captain America moments.
Well, that too. Got some great action beats here. He grabs the ponytail. Again, it's very much kind of a street fight in many places, but a street fight in like a very bombastic, bigger than life settings. And like Superman, he's dishing out whatever this guy's throwing at him. It's a very even fight for the most part here, but the problem is, Superman is getting the wind knocked at him because again, one, he's dividing his attention, saving people, and two, again, Doomsday, he's adapting to whatever he's throwing at him.
Oh God, this one shot of Ma Kent just breaks my heart, Dragon.
And that's from the book too. And again, Tiki, you mentioned we're seeing the fight from various perspectives, and of course, this whole thing with Lois and Jimmy monitoring from the helicopter, that was throughout the action sequence in the book and the other animated film. We do kind of keep Lois alive in the action and kind of like, and of course, it being filmed, we cut to Jonathan and Martha Kent watching it at home. And again, being very, very worried about their son throughout the course of this fight. Now, Tiki, this to me gets me kind of emotional, this bit here. Before, of course, the stuff towards the very end of the movie, this bit kind of gets me on a rewatch here because it's such a sweet callback to the Superman 78 here, where it says, "I've got you, you've got me, who's got you?" That to me is so beautiful, it's so charming. It's like, oh my God, the fact that Superman's remaining as hopeful as he can.
You know what, Dragon? I didn't even catch that line when I first watched the movie, but yeah, you're right. That is sweet.
So sweet and charming, and I love the fact that Superman's being charming and hopeful up till he's keeping a brave face. He's like the patriarch of superheroes here, where it's like he's keeping the boat afloat. He's keeping things as light as he can in the most dire, literally a doomsday that is hitting Metropolis. He's trying to keep things as light as he can so people don't panic and get really dour and depressed.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, here this is a bit everyone complains like, why doesn't he throw Doomsday into space? And of course we do a bit of they did this in Batman v Superman, but here we do it in kind of a more we do it here too, but thankfully no nukes hit both of them. Like we don't have like a big more like, okay, well, some stupid guy launched the nuke at the two of them.
God.
But this is cool.
The villain from the Iron Giant is at it again. Another nuke's up in the sky.
Yep.
We have no Iron Giant to retrieve it this time.
Okay, this is just Studio Mirror gravy right here. This headbutt motion right here, like that's Studio Mirror at its finest right there. That's this old kamikaze move. Originally, and again, Superman and Doomsday, they abbreviated the fight and they ended with basically when they make the impact. That's what killed the two of them. But they kind of like, again, they're what they're doing so brilliantly, Tiki, is they're kind of combining all the versions of the death of Superman that we've had already.
Right.
And they're kind of like, and doing their own thing.
Because the way that it ultimately ends up is very Batman versus Superman, honestly.
That's the thing. They meld. In the end, what they do is they meld Man of Steel, they meld Batman v Superman, they meld, again, the kamikaze move we just had just now from Superman and Doomsday. And we have the thing from the comic where we have a shot of the two of them. It's basically the way they get killed off in the comic is that they hit each other at the right spot. They basically beat each other to death, and they both hit each other at the same time, and they fall over, which was not really the most cinematic way of killing them. Yeah.
Okay, so I love Luthor's reintroduction here. I think it's so silly. It's very J. Jonah Jameson-esque.
The Justice League gets taken out once a week. You think I'm scared? And Rainn Wilson just eating this up. So
originally, he really does get the chance to play supervillain Luthor.
again, like Luthor's owning this movie like it's his. It's classic Lex is trying to steal the movie here. I love that here's the thing, we changed the setting here because originally the fight between Superman and Doomsday ended in front of the Daily Planet in the comic. And here we did it in the Hall of Justice. We basically we destroyed the Hall of Justice, which again is kind of like a big, like good, again, using our architecture well here. The heart of Metropolis is the heart of justice, the Hall of Justice. And we destroy that as a symbol of, okay, we're destroying truth, justice in the American way in some respect with that, in his last moments,
Sure, sure. All right.
Of course, here again,
kind of really invested in Luthor here right now.
Of course, the heat visions. What did Luthor? Again, Luthor, like he was saving the day, and then he's like, now to get a piece of you.
And of course, we have Superman even saving Luthor in his dying moments. My God,
this is the stuff I live for with superheroes. I live for them saving the bad guy in the moments where, like, yeah, you have a good hero and they save everyone, even the bad guy.
Yep.
And of course, now you wonder, like a part of you wonders for a moment, is Lex going to learn something here? But of course, like Rainn Wilson does it so beautifully. He says, "No, like no, he's going to steal my glory here."
Yeah.
So basically, once the Hall of Justice comes down here, and again, the sheer scope of this fight. Again, we're using pre-established location too, which kind of makes it even more relevant while we're doing this. Why we're doing this in the Hall of Justice in the first place. After it comes down, when they're fighting each other, and basically, again, it's so faithful to the book here because we even put Superman in the shorts here. Basically, like the costume tears so much, like he's basically in like a Hercules getup at this point. It's like barely.
Yeah, for sure.
Like again, that's straight from the book, which we've never seen in animation before. Like it done this right off the page. Like when they're punching each other here, and when the whole thing comes down, there's like they're fighting, punching each other. Like this is how they died in the book right here. But again, we keep adding on to it, and they're kind of keeping you guessing as to how exactly they're going to kill him off. Because again, okay, like how are we going to do this?
All right.
Like this is the slugfest, and I love that progressively in the book the idea is that each issue of the 7 issues, it went from like 7 panels to the next issue. So basically every issue like counted down the number of panels to the last comic, the Big Death issue, which was all splash pages, as in one giant panel per page.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of what they're doing here, and that's kind of what they did in the action. That each action got severely bigger and more splash pageier to the big death blows we have in this scene to the end.
This is pretty brutal, man. This is basically Passion of the Superman.
Pretty much. Of course, he ripped open.
And this scene breaks my heart, man. It really does. Oh my God.
My read on this scene is that Lois is doing one of 2 things here, and it could be both.
She's saying goodbye for the most part.
She's saying goodbye, and possibly that's like, hey, I can't live without him, so you're going to have to kill me too. And I think on the back of her mind, she's hoping that even if I die, hopefully this will motivate him to stop this thing. Like, hopefully, like, cause some last swell of strength, which it does. And okay, so one, he's growing little spikes from his hands here, which of course is a big Batman versus Superman callback for what we have coming up here. Which again, I think is warranted here than it was there. At least I love how all of it came together here. Like we're mixing all of these elements, and we justify. It's so funny, Tiki. We justify all the stuff that people rant about with the DCE, and we kind of made it work here. Because we have the big neck snap coming up here.
Oh yeah.
Here's the thing. Again, if you're gonna have Superman kill Doomsday, again, but by all means, it's perfectly fine if Superman kills Doomsday because again, he's a monster, he's barely even alive. It's perfectly fine. But if you're going to do it, like this is how you do a neck snap with Superman. Now, I will admit there is one we don't care in this movie. The whole go, we don't care is the fact that everyone's will bring this up and it's like if this movie earned one we don't care, like how does Lois survive the impact of like all that she's like a few feet away?
Crap.
Exactly, because it did such a good job up to this point. You don't
care. Exactly.
Perfect example of a we don't care.
It really is. It really
I like how we kind of fuse both Superman endings here. Where okay, snap the neck, and he's been impaled. Just like
both of the controversial choices from the DC Superman movies.
But this time he didn't have a kryptonite spear.
But
yeah, and again, this of course is right from the book here. The last moments where he's cradled in Lois's arms. We have a really great line here this time where he says, it's not just like, is everybody safe, which is from the book. Here it's this beautifully sad line where, good, that's all I ever wanted. What a lucky
Yeah.
man I was. The whole what a lucky man I was. That's what kills me about
Oh
this.
my god, I know, dude. The first time I saw that, I was, especially the past tense of that, not what a lucky man I am, but I was, like, he
I
knows
know.
he's done for. Like, Jesus.
Again, he's crying not for the fact that he's dying. He's crying for the fact that like he said that he loves Lois and he can't live the life that he just woke up to the fact that I love this woman. I why was I so foolish in hiding my identity from her in the first place? Why? Like he just came to that realization. Even Batman here, you see, Batman he drops the kind of the bravado and the anger. Like he's just Batman's done here. Like that's the thing. Like when he basically
Right,
unclenches his
right.
fist there, it's like that's Batman kind of giving up. Like I'm done. He's dead. It's like he's so bummed out by it because loss
Of
affects
course,
Batman. A
there's the
very
iconic flag shot.
Of course, Batman's very affected by loss of anybody, and of course, the loss of Superman, kind of his opposite in the DC universe. The guy, like his begrudging best pal in the world, has just gotten killed.
Which is why you appreciated Teen Titans Go to the Movies so much, of course. All right, I'm sorry, that was inappropriate.
Anyway, so of course, I love the fact that Jimmy Olsen we got the photograph that Bibbo was holding here because his phone didn't work, and Jimmy Olsen took this photograph like, kid, the ribs are on me, and we have this beautiful payoff to all that here, where Bibbo sheds a tear looking at the photo of him and his pal.
Uh-huh.
And again, these are the Bibbo moments from the book, Tiki, where like he's crying alone in the bar, after Superman's died. Now, I'll admit this, and I don't have a problem with this necessarily, but it's something definitely I feel the film just kind of falls into the trap of. We do have multiple endings, but it's kind of the
Oh,
Back
they
to the
very
Future.
much Return of the King the fuck out of this shit, man. They really
It's
do.
it's like Back to the Future meets Return of the King, and that's kind of like a whole like, wait, we have to go, Marty, it's your kids. Basically, all the post-credit scenes are Marty, it's your kids, essentially, each and
Right,
every one.
right. Pretty much.
Okay, this is the sad bit I'm talking about here, where Jonathan and Martha Kent weren't allowed to come to the funeral in the comic, and what they did. Now, again, I don't know if they're going to do this in the next movie, and I wouldn't bet on it, honestly, but the idea in the comic was that Jonathan and Martha Kent, they weren't allowed to come to the funeral, but what they did is in Smallville, they buried like a box full like photo albums and like childhood possessions of young Clark Kent. They put into a box and they buried in the crater where his ship landed.
Huh. Nice.
That was their
Nice.
mourning of their son here. Of course, this is Pete Tomasi here, just kind of referencing. He put Damian Wayne in there for like a little cameo. Now, let me say this. So, again, because we've adapted the story like roughly 3 to 4 times at this point, I got to admit, this is all great. Don't get me wrong, but I think hereafter the Justice League the animated show when they did the funeral essentially. That's the section they did. They did the funeral, the world long, the mourning Superman. I think they had the best funeral scene. I got to be honest, because they did one of my favorite bits from the comic, where it's Batman like, in full costume instead of what we just don't know. What we just have is still pretty nice. There, it was just like Bruce doesn't come to the funeral, but we have like a better explanation of it hereafter, where Batman doesn't believe that Superman's dead, but he does in costume as the funeral's going on. It's like at nighttime. He shows up for like a quick cameo that only Wonder Woman out of the corner of her eye spots. Like I love that a little bit more than what we have here with him, but it's still all this other stuff that was so it's so emotionally raw and so well executed here. We have the soldiers shedding a tear over Superman. Again, everyone's affected by this. Here's the thing, you feel the nationwide loss more than we've done anywhere else. That's the thing. Like the funeral itself is like, you're kind of missing a few iconic elements, but you make up for it with all of this. I mean, the ending is so depressing in all the right ways. It's like you gotta feel the death of Superman if you're gonna do that.
Sure.
And this is something that I'm sure certain internet podcasters and reviewers are going to appreciate here. The fact that we did the statue right, we did the classic, Superman with the eagle instead of the big depressing Superman logo.
Yep. Thank God.
Here we go. Now, honestly, the movie could have ended here. Again, the multiple endings. This to me would have been a perfect ending right here. Bibbo basically saying this prayer, and this is straight from the book. I swear it is straight from the book. Where Bibbo is giving this, and I love how we show each character as he's giving this prayer to like the according thing here, where Lois reunites with the Kents after the loss, saying, she knows, and, she's going to be with them at this very vulnerable moment. The music here kills me. It's how so sad it is. Just poor Bibbo.
Yeah, this is a power, like, why would you let Superman die when a washed up old roughneck like me goes on living?
Just ain't right.
My God.
Oh God, it's so. Again, the movie. Again, the
so
heavens
sad are because that's the only way we can add some levity into this.
I mean, the heavens are crying for Superman at this moment here. It's a perfect ending, and then basically now we get into the Back to the Future, Return of the King of it all. Here.
Yeah, now it's just kind of like that. I feel like that would have been the perfect ending, Dragon. I really do.
Now let me say, look, I think personally the Bibbo thing I think would have been the perfect ending.
Yeah,
but I still think the ending that we do have, considering what they're going to do, does make a lot of sense, though.
I mean, it makes sense. It's just a little bit like, it's a little bit more, okay, we need to tell the next story and less artistically driven. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's a great epilogue, essentially. But again, like, the ending is Bibbo. This is the epilogue.
All right.
Of course, they have Doomsday's body, by the way, which Luthor wants to get his hands on, so he can create like the next super monster, if you will. So he can basically clone Doomsday for his own devices. Which, again, as I told you about Doomsday's origin, is a horrible idea. Never clone Doomsday, folks. Never do it. Now, this ship is doing one of two things. Most likely, it is setting up Eradicator. Because, again, inside the ship is the crystal, which, again, the crystal will create the Fortress of Solitude, and, basically the whole, the Kryptonian artifact version of Superman.
Nice.
But another way of looking at it, I don't know this for certain until we get to the next movie, it might be, grabbing Superman, it might be reviving Superman for all we know. Again, we're not entirely sure how they're going to bring Superman back, because that's the thing you always change whenever you adapt it, Tiki. They never bring back Superman the same way, so I don't know how they're going to go about it this time around. Sometimes he goes into stasis, sometimes he's, I don't know, we'll talk about that in the next one.
Sure. We'll see.
This is always the cover story. They always use this cover story of Clark Kent's gone missing because a lot of people were killed and had gone missing. Again, essentially it was like a 9/11 scale event for Metropolis. Like, there's a lot of damage and destruction and chaos. Like, people are being found every day. So Clark's gone missing because of that. That's how they wrote off Clark Kent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here's the thing. I do like this saying. This is a shot straight from the book. That basically, if you're going to do the whole, like, in setting up the next movie, this is like a great epilogue ending here where Jimmy Olsen's on the scene, and we have this really cryptic, like, is that Superman? Which is what the next movie is going to be all about.
No, you're right, Dragon. I do like that. I do like that element of it. That is a good kind of end point. I think my whole problem with the ending is just they work in a little bit too much Doomsday exposition. It's like, I feel like the Doomsday exposition is stuff we could have done at the top of the first movie, or the second movie, I mean. But beyond that Superman thing is a really good way to end things off. Yeah.
So, of course, we have a number of really four kind of setup post-credit scenes here, and we'll just kind of go through them here. Not really a lot to them, saying like, oh, this guy's being set up, this guy's being set up, pretty much.
Go nuts, Dragon.
That crypt that we just saw, though, the crypt from early. I remember in Death of Superman Lives, what happened. We learned that crypt might have been when they had to scale down the budget for that movie. They were contemplating doing the Fortress of Solitude as like a hologram inside the crypt.
Interesting.
Be interesting to see how much they pull from Superman Lives, if anything, in the next movie.
Yeah, right.
All right, so this is Cadmus Labs, the cloning place with the creepy mustache guy we saw earlier, Dobson.
Oh dear.
Dabney Donovan, I should say. Now, that was Superboy. Now, here's the thing. Now, Superboy, I could tease you with, I know exactly who's going to play Superboy, and you're going to love it, Tiki, but I won't tell you yet.
Okay.
Superboy, there was a young Superboy clone, not to be confused with the Superboy that everybody loves from Young Justice. That's a cool Superboy, but that's not the one that they're doing here. At least the one, if they're doing the book, Death of Superman and the Reign of Superman, that's not the same one. Basically, it's a younger, like a kind of a younger kid version, like a teenage version of Superman wearing like this jacket and very like 90s style. Whereas, of course, John Henry Irons here, he basically builds kind of an Iron Man suit as Superman, living basically. See, the thing with each of these Supermen that we're going to get in the next movie, Tiki, is that each of them represent an aspect of Superman, and the gimmick of that whole story is that no one can replace the true article, and that these guys like a quarter of what Superman is. And we always look towards the next replacement. We never really take away, like we don't know what we had until it was gone. And it basically was the whole device of this story was, well, we have to wait until we can tell our big Superman marrying Lois Lane, we're going to make you miss him in the meantime. And making you miss him in the meantime, we're going to basically highlight that no one gives a crap about Superman. That's a travesty. And we're going to show you why you should give a crap about Superman, because you're going to have 4 posers in his place.
Well said.
Of course, here we have a really cool one. Now, of course, there's a reference to the John Peters, to Superman Lives right there. We have the polar bear.
Yep, of course.
But this was cool. I like that we got the Fortress of Solitude, and again, this is Eradicator. Again, the ship most likely went to the Arctic here, and that crystal grew the Fortress of Solitude, which essentially the Kryptonian part of Superman is embodied by Eradicator. The moral part is embodied by Steel, and the I guess kind of the Earthbound, like kind of the kid who grew up on the planet. That's kind of Superboy, I believe. Like the Clark Kent side. Basically, it's each of them's like a what if portion of Superman. Like if Superman was raised by the Metropolis instead of raised by the Kents, that's kind of Superboy. If if he was human, that's Steel. If he's all Kryptonian, that's Eradicator. And then, of course, if he used his powers for evil, Cyborg Superman.
All right.
Like you take out all the humanity from Superman, Cyborg. And yeah, that's all she wrote. What do you think?
Yeah, I was quite impressed with it, Dragon. Like I said, I think structurally the best thing this thing has going for it is its pacing. It really is a rapid-fire roller coaster ride through the best of the comic and telling it and retelling it in an interesting way. Like I said, I don't think it's... I'd say probably in my rankings, I'd say it's probably the best one we've had so far this year out of these types of movies. I like it better than Gotham by Gaslight. I think it stands pretty much head to toe with Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, but it's a little better than that. It's not quite as good as some of my favorites, like Gods and Monsters, and also, of course, the one that can't be beat, which is Return of the Caped Crusaders. But, of course, these are all wildly different movies made for wildly different reasons, so who am I to judge? As long as we get a lot of Fabian in the next one, I'll be good to go. And, yeah, like I said, it's a well-done ride. A lot of emotional moments, a lot of thrills, a lot of suspense, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, just put it simply, it's a great example of how to readapt Death of Superman and make it count. I mean, again, I love the fact that this isn't a completed story yet. I feel so fulfilled with the story that they told. Like, this is how you do a 2-parter. The next story, it's going to be in the whole the big replacement story. And here we have kind of the death and the impact and the loss. My hope for the next one is that at the very top of it, we continue the whole world with that Superman angle. We get some more Bibbo stuff. We have more just kind of people reeling before we get that story. Like, I hope that's like kind of like the cold open of the next one. Then we have like all the replacements. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but then again, we kind of set up that Superman's back, so I'm getting a sense that we might not do that. So again, the jury's out, and I'm definitely, my only fear with the next one is that we're not going to get Fabian in it. That's my only fear. I mean, because he has to be worked in there somehow. Because again, we saw that character established. I mean, somehow I hope they didn't just bring him back for like that one role. But if they did, he did an excellent job in this movie. But yeah, on the whole, I think I liked Hell to Pay a little bit better because that was kind of different. That was like Alan Burnett's swan song. But this was great, though. This is kind of, it surprised me how much I liked this. I was kind of like crossing my fingers. This is going to be good. And it exceeded my expectations. It was really good. It kind of captured all the feelings that you have reading the best parts of Death of Superman. So I was very satisfied with, like, it. Can't say enough nice things about it. So yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for watching, folks. Of course, we're still trying to get caught up with the Marvel Netflix stuff before Iron Fist Season 2, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, don't forget, the fire rises!